The pearl bracelet was still resting in its velvet box when I saw the photograph. 30 people stood beneath a white canopy at the oceanfront resort, smiling around a dinosaur cake I had ordered and paid for. My husband had one arm around his daughter. Denise, the mother who had missed most of the hard years, leaned into the frame beside him while holding my grandson. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, even a woman Lauren once told me she could barely tolerate were all there. I was not. Beneath the photograph, Lauren had written, "Celebrating with the people who have always been family." That was the moment I understood I had not been forgotten. I had been removed. My name is Evelyn Carter. I was 57 that spring, and for 23 years I had been the woman who showed up. I married Richard when Lauren was 12 and Michael was 9. Their mother, Denise, had moved away after the divorce. She called sent cards and appeared for graduations or birthdays, especially when there would be pictures. But the ordinary work of raising children happened in our house in Charleston. I never asked Lauren or Michael to call me Mom. They already had one. I packed lunches, waded through parent-teacher conferences, learned which cereal Michael would eat, and which songs Lauren played when she was upset, and trusted that consistency would mean something. Sometimes it did. When Denise canceled her flight before Lauren's senior dance, Lauren cried in my car while I fixed the strap on her dress with a safety pin. She asked me not to tell Richard how disappointed she was. I promised I would not, and drove her to the hotel with one hand on the wheel and the other resting between us, close enough for her to take. She did. Years later, when Michael crashed his truck outside Columbia, I sat beside him in the emergency room until dawn. Richard was driving back from Tennessee, and every time Michael woke, he asked whether his father knew. I told him he was safe until he stopped asking. When Lauren had Noah, I came 3 mornings a week so she could return to work. Noah called me Grandma Evie before anyone taught him to. Lauren never corrected him. Before I married Richard, I had built a modest life of my own. I owned a small interior design shop, inherited a lake house from my parents, and saved carefully. Over the years, I helped with Lauren's nursing tuition, Michael's first apartment deposit, and bills, when either child was stretched thin. When Michael started his renovation company, I lent him enough to buy his first set of commercial tools. I did not think generosity bought me a place in the family. I thought I already had one. The bracelet had belonged to my mother. Small cream-colored pearls with a gold clasp she used to fasten with her teeth. I planned to give it to Lauren on her 10th wedding anniversary. Years earlier, I had written a letter to go with it. I never found the right time. Then Noah turned 8. Lauren wanted his party at a small resort outside Charleston, with weathered boardwalks and a covered pavilion facing the water. She told me the venue cost more than she expected. I paid the rental deposit, ordered the cake, and covered the decorations after she admitted she was over budget. I also spent a weekend making Noah a photo album, beginning with the first picture I took of him asleep against my shoulder. 2 days before the party, Lauren texted me. We decided to keep it small, just immediate family. When Richard came home, I showed him. He loosened his tie, frowned at the screen, and said, "Don't take it personally, Evie. She probably means blood relatives." He said it gently, which made it worse. Am I supposed to help pay as a relative and disappear as a guest? Richard rubbed the back of his neck. I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. That is exactly what the message says. After a long silence, I told him he should still go. Noah had done nothing wrong, and I did not want an 8-year-old's birthday turned into a family standoff. Richard promised he would give Noah our gift stay through the cake and come home. I wrapped the album and left it beside his keys. That evening, Martha called. We had been friends since my shop opened, and she knew my family well enough to ask questions Richard avoided. I thought the party was supposed to be small, she said. It was. A pause. Evelyn, there are pictures online. It doesn't look small. I opened Lauren's page while Martha stayed on the phone. There were more than 30 guests. Lauren's co-workers, Michael's business partner, neighbors, college friends. Denise had flown in from Arizona and stood near the center of nearly every picture, smiling like she had never missed a school recital or a fever. The cake I bought sat in the center of the table. The decorations I paid for hung from the pavilion roof. Richard was in 6 photographs. He had not come home after the cake. In one picture, he held Noah while Denise leaned into the frame beside him. Nothing about the pose was improper, but they looked like the family I had interrupted rather than the one I had helped hold together. Then I saw the caption, "Celebrating with the people who have always been family." Richard came home 40 minutes later. The party got bigger than Lauren said, I told him. He looked at the floor. I know. Why did you stay? I told myself leaving would embarrass Noah. And the truth. He took a long breath. Leaving would have meant admitting Lauren did it on purpose. So you stayed. He nodded once. And by staying, you showed her she could exclude me without losing anything. Richard had no answer. Upstairs, my mother's bracelet was still waiting in its box for a daughter who had just announced publicly and deliberately that I had never been one. I did not call Lauren that night. I stood at the sink, washed 2 coffee cups that were already clean, and let the water run until the windows fogged. Then I turned it off. I want Lauren and Michael here for dinner on Sunday. Richard looked up. For what? I dried my hands slowly. To find out whether that caption was careless, I said, or honest. Sunday arrived with a bright blue sky that made Charleston look almost too peaceful for what was waiting inside our house. I spent the afternoon cooking because cooking gave my hands something to do. Pot roast rosemary potatoes, green beans with almonds. The same meal Lauren had requested every year when she was in college. I nearly changed the menu when I realized that, but I stopped myself. I was not going to rewrite 23 years of my own life just because someone else had decided those years did not count. Richard hovered in the kitchen while I worked. Maybe we should wait, he said. Give everyone a few days. I slid the roasting pan into the oven. We have already waited. Lauren was emotional. So was I. That is not what I meant. I closed the oven door and faced him. You knew I had been excluded. You went anyway. Then you stayed after you saw the truth. His shoulders tightened. I already told you why. You told yourself leaving would embarrass Noah. Richard looked toward the window. And I told you the rest, he said quietly. Yes, you stayed because leaving would have forced you to confront Lauren. He rubbed his palm over the back of his neck. I handled it badly. You handled it comfortably. That landed harder than I expected. His mouth opened, then closed. I softened my voice, but not the point. I do not want you to choose between your children and me, Richard. I want you to stop acting as though avoiding a choice means nobody gets hurt. At 6:30, Lauren arrived with Michael. Neither brought Noah. I noticed that immediately. Lauren wore navy scrubs beneath a gray coat. She kissed Richard's cheek, gave me a quick smile, and placed her purse on the entry table as though this were any other Sunday dinner. Michael followed her in wearing work boots and a faded company jacket. A streak of white paint marked one sleeve. Sorry, he said. One of my crews walked off a job this morning. Richard clapped him on the shoulder. Everything all right. It will be. That was the pattern in our family. Richard asked about their problems before they had taken off their coats. Mine waited until after dinner. For the first 20 minutes, everyone pretended. Lauren complimented the roast. Michael asked whether I had finished repainting the guest room at the lake house. Richard told a story about a neighbor's dog getting loose near the marina. I answered when spoken to, and watched the 3 of them work together to keep the evening shallow. When the plates were nearly empty, I folded my napkin and placed it beside my fork. I want to talk about Noah's party. Lauren leaned back. What about it? You told me it was immediate family only. It was supposed to be. There were more than 30 people there. Plans changed. No one told me. Lauren exhaled. I did not think it needed to become a whole thing. I looked at Michael. Did you know I had been told not to come? He glanced at Lauren before answering. I knew she was keeping it limited. Limited to everyone except me. Michael rubbed his thumb over the edge of his glass. Evelyn, it was Noah's birthday. It was not meant as some statement about your place in the family. Then what did the caption mean? Lauren's expression hardened. I knew this was why you invited us. I invited you because I wanted the truth directly. The truth is you are making this about yourself. I paid the venue deposit. I bought the cake. I covered the decorations. Nobody asks you to do all that. The words came so quickly that even Lauren seemed surprised by them. I stared at her. She crossed her arms. You always do this. You offer help, then later it becomes evidence that people owe you something. What exactly am I asking you to owe me? A place, gratitude, loyalty, whatever this is. Michael shifted in his chair. He looked uncomfortable, but he kept his eyes on the table. I wanted to be invited to my grandson's birthday, I said. He is my son, and I have cared for him 3 mornings a week since you returned to work. Because you wanted to. The room went still. Richard cleared his throat. Lauren slowed down. She turned on him. No, Dad. This has been building for years. Every time Evelyn pays for something, we are supposed to act like it makes her our mother. I never asked either of you to call me that. You did not have to. Michael finally spoke. Maybe some distance would be good for a while. His voice was softer than Lauren's, but he did not look at me. He knew she was being cruel. He had simply decided silence was safer. I turned back to Lauren. For 23 years I have respected the fact that you have a mother. I never competed with Denise. Something shifted in her face. You always say that, she replied, but whenever Mom comes back you look hurt if we spend time with her. I was not asking you to choose. You do not have to ask, you just stand there looking disappointed until Dad feels guilty. Richard sat straighter. That is not fair. Lauren laughed once without humor. Of course you would say that. I understood then that whenever Denise returned, Lauren became 12 again. Still angry at the mother who had left, but more willing to punish the woman who stayed because I was the one close enough to absorb it. Understanding did not make it acceptable. I loved you, I said. I helped with your tuition. I sat beside Michael in the hospital. I helped raise Noah. I am not listing those things to purchase a title. I am saying they happened. I was there. Lauren's eyes flashed. And Dad already told us we would be taken care of someday. Is that not enough? Why does every dinner have to become a loyalty test? The room narrowed around me. I looked at Richard. He lowered his eyes. Taken care of how I asked? Lauren hesitated. Michael answered. The trust. Richard said my name quietly. Evelyn. You told them. I was trying to reassure them. About my private estate. I wanted them to know you saw them as your own. Lauren pushed her chair back. This is exactly what I mean. Money, money, money. Everything comes back to what you have done for us. No, I said. This comes back to what you believe belongs to you. Her face hardened completely. You are not our real mother, she said. You never were. Stay out of our lives. For several seconds I heard only the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Michael said nothing. Richard finally spoke. Lauren, that is enough. 4 words. No demand for an apology, no correction, no request that she leave. Lauren looked directly at me. And stop acting like helping us makes you family, she added. Money does not buy that. I stood, lifted my plate, and carried it to the kitchen. Behind me, Richard said, Evelyn, wait. I set the plate in the sink and turned around. You asked me to stay out of your lives, I said. I heard you. Then I walked upstairs. Richard came into the bedroom several minutes later and closed the door softly. They are under pressure, he said. Michael's business is struggling. Denise being here always stirs things up with Lauren. When she said I had never been family, why did you not tell her she was wrong? He looked toward the window. I did not want to make it worse. You said the same thing about the party. His jaw tightened. You stayed there because leaving would have required you to confront her. Tonight you stayed silent for the same reason. That is not fair. No, I said, it was not. After he fell asleep, I went downstairs and opened the fireproof box in the study. The trust documents were inside, along with the letter I had written years earlier, to the children I did not give birth to but chose every day. I carried the letter upstairs, opened my mother's bracelet box, and placed it beneath the pearls. For years I thought the bracelet was waiting for the right anniversary. That night I realized it had been waiting for me to stop begging for one. The next morning I called Daniel Price. Daniel Price's office sat above a pharmacy on King Street inside a narrow brick building that always smelled faintly of old paper and lemon furniture polish. I had been there enough times to know which floorboard creaked near the conference room and which chair Daniel kept for clients who needed to feel steady. He did not ask why I had called. He waited until I sat down, folded my hands on the table, and told him myself. I need to understand exactly what I can change. Daniel removed his glasses and set them beside a yellow legal pad. Your trust. Yes. He studied my face for a moment. Are we talking about tax provisions or beneficiaries? Beneficiaries. That was the first time the word felt real. Daniel opened the trust binder and turned to the distribution schedule. Lauren's and Michael's names were printed in clean black type beside percentages I had chosen 12 years earlier. Before we discuss removing anyone, he said, tell me what you want, protected. Richard, if I die first. Noah's education. Those do not change. And Lauren and Michael. I kept my eyes on the page. I want them removed as direct beneficiaries. Daniel rested his pen on the pad. The trust is revocable. Most of the assets came from your business premarital savings or your parents' estate. You have the legal authority to amend it. Richard does not have to sign. Not for those assets. His spousal protections remain separate. And Noah? We can move his education money under an independent trustee. Tuition books, approved living expenses. Lauren would not control the account. I let out a breath. I do not want an 8-year-old punished for something his mother said. He would not be. Daniel slid the old schedule closer. Legally removing a name is simple. Emotionally, it usually is not. I remembered the evening I had added them. Lauren had just passed her nursing boards and called me from the parking lot, laughing and crying at once. Michael was still working out of the back of a used pickup before I lent him the money for commercial tools. I had told Richard I wanted both children included equally because that was what family meant to me then. Now Daniel placed an amendment in front of me. "Do you need more time?" he asked. "Probably." He nodded. "Then take it." I sat for nearly a minute listening to traffic pass below the window. Then I signed. Removing their names took less than 10 minutes. Accepting what those 10 minutes meant took much longer. The new plan kept Richard as my primary beneficiary. Noah's education fund remained intact and would be managed independently until he was 25. A portion of the remaining estate would eventually support older women who had spent years caring for families without financial protection. The lake house would remain available to Richard during his lifetime, then be sold to strengthen Noah's fund and the charitable provision. I was not taking away something Lauren and Michael had earned. I was changing a gift I had once intended to give. Daniel gathered the papers into a folder. "Do either of them believe they can rely on these assets now?" he asked. "Not legally, but they expect them. Expectations become dangerous when people build plans around them." I thought of Michael's renovation company always expanding one step beyond what his cash flow could support. "What happens if he asks you for confirmation?" "I disclose only what you authorize, but I cannot tell him he is a beneficiary when he is not." That evening, I called Martha from the back porch. She listened while I explained the amendment. When I finished, she asked, "Does it feel like revenge?" "No," you answered quickly. "Because I did not take their homes, their savings, or anything they worked for. I changed what I planned to leave them." "The hard part comes later," she said. "What hard part?" "When they panic, when one of them cries, when Richard asks you to make things easier. Signing is simple. Not running back to rescue people is what costs you." 2 days later, Richard found Daniel's card beside my keys. He held it up when I entered the kitchen. "Why were you at his office?" "I took off my coat. I changed the trust." His face went blank. "Changed it how?" "Lauren and Michael are no longer beneficiaries." He sat down slowly. "You did that without telling me. They are my assets. They are my children. And I am your wife." "That is not what I meant." "It is what you said." Richard stood again and walked toward the window. "Lauren said something terrible, but this makes it permanent. Their words felt permanent when you let them stand." I was trying not to make things worse. "You said that at the party. You said it at dinner. Every time the truth asks something difficult of you, you call silence peace." He turned toward me. "What do you want me to do?" "Stop loving my children." "No. I want you to stop asking me to absorb the cost of loving them." He looked down at the card in his hand. "I told them about the trust because I wanted them to know you loved them," he said. "After Denise came back around more often, Lauren kept asking whether you would leave everything to charity because you had no children of your own." I wanted to reassure her. "You used my estate as proof. I used your plan as proof. And they turned the plan into an expectation." Richard's fingers tightened around the card. "I saw signs," he said quietly. The words made me still. "What signs?" He glanced toward the desk near the living room window, then looked away. "Things they said, the way Michael talked about the lake house, Lauren asking questions about timelines." "That is not all." He did not answer immediately. "I kept telling myself they were speaking carelessly," he said, "that they did not mean it the way it sounded." "What did you see, Richard?" He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the card. "I am not ready to talk about that." I stared at him. He had spent years asking me to be patient while he prepared himself to face things other people had already forced me to live through. "Then understand this," I said. "I am done waiting for you to become ready before I protect myself." A week later, Michael asked Richard to meet for coffee. He wanted a letter confirming family financial support for his company's expansion. He had told a potential investor that property-backed family capital might be available if the business ran into trouble. "Did you promise him that I asked?" "No." "Did I?" "No." "Then there is no letter." Michael contacted Daniel's office the next morning anyway. He asked whether the trust could confirm that he remained a future beneficiary. Daniel called me before responding. "I will not disclose amounts," he said, but I can confirm there is no financial commitment and that he is not currently named. Tell him the truth. Michael called 20 minutes later. I watched his name light up my phone and let it ring. Then Lauren texted, "What did you do?" Not, "Are you all right?" Not, "Can we talk?" Just a question about the money. They had asked me to stay out of their lives. Now they were beginning to understand what that request actually meant. Lauren and Michael arrived the following Sunday without calling first. Richard was in the garage when their car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the front window as Lauren stepped out, holding a folder against her chest. Michael came around the other side in work boots and a dark company jacket, his jaw already set. Neither of them looked confused. They looked offended. Richard came in behind them, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Let's keep this calm," he said, before anyone had even taken a seat. Lauren gave him a hard look. "You knew." "I knew Evelyn changed the trust." "And you let her—" Richard glanced at me. "It is her trust." The answer was true, but I could hear how carefully he had chosen it. He was still trying to stand in the middle without admitting there was no middle left. Lauren dropped the folder onto the dining table. Several pages slid halfway out. "You are punishing us," she said. "That is what this is." I sat across from her. "You asked me to stay out of your lives." That was said in anger. It was said clearly. Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You knew I was trying to expand the company." "I knew you were trying to expand. I did not know you were presenting my estate as backup capital." His jaw tightened. "I said there might be family support if things went wrong." "Did I promise you that?" "No, but Dad told us." "Your father told you that I once planned to leave you something. That was not a business guarantee." Lauren opened the folder and pushed a printed email toward me. It was Daniel's response to Michael's request, confirming there was no financial commitment from my trust and that Michael was not currently named as a beneficiary. "This cost him an investor," she said. Michael corrected her without looking up. "It delayed the deal." "Because the investor asked for proof of money that was never yours," I said. Lauren's voice rose. "You knew what he was counting on." "I knew what he hoped for. I did not know he had turned my death into a line on a financial projection." Richard closed his eyes briefly. Michael stood. "That is not what I did." "Then explain what you did." He stayed on his feet for a moment, breathing through his nose, then sat again. Lauren turned toward her father. "Dad, she is cutting us out of the family." "No," I said. "I removed you from my estate plan. Those are not the same thing. They are when money is how you show love." That accusation would once have sent me scrambling to defend every check, every meal, every morning with Noah. This time I let it sit where she had placed it. "You told me money could not make me family," I said. "I believed you." Lauren looked away first. Then she tried another direction. "What about Noah? Did you cut him off too?" "No." Her eyes snapped back to mine. "His education fund is protected. An independent trustee controls it. It can be used for tuition books and approved living expenses. You cannot withdraw from it, and neither can I use it to control you. So you will pay for my son but punish me. I am protecting a child. I am setting a boundary with an adult." Michael stared at the table. Lauren pressed her lips together as if she had reached the end of the argument she had rehearsed. For several seconds no one spoke. Then Richard said, "There is something else." His voice was quiet but not uncertain. Lauren frowned. "What?" Richard walked to the desk near the window and opened the top drawer. He returned with 2 printed pages. My stomach tightened. I had not seen them before. A month ago he said Michael meant to email Lauren about the expansion, but autocomplete pulled up an old family distribution list instead. My address was still on it, and Lauren replied without checking the recipients. Michael's face lost color. Richard placed the pages on the table. "I read the exchange that night," he continued. "I printed it because part of me knew I would eventually have to show Evelyn. Then I put it in that drawer and spent a month pretending I was still deciding what to do." I looked at him. He did not look away. "I knew what it meant," he said. "And I hid it because I was afraid that once Evelyn saw it, I could no longer pretend this family was simply going through a rough patch." "I should have shown you," he added. "I should have confronted them then." "What did it say?" I asked. Richard removed his hand from the pages. Michael had written that the investor wanted stronger reassurance about family backing. Lauren's response sat beneath it. "Keep Evelyn happy until the trust transfers. She has no children of her own. Who else is she going to leave it to?" Michael had replied. "Exactly. Once the lake house is ours, we can sell it and cover the expansion without outside money." The words were plain. That made them worse. There was no anger in them, no joking exaggeration, no argument they could later blame on emotion. Just two adults discussing my life as a waiting period before property changed hands. Lauren shook her head. That is out of context. What context improves it? Richard asked. We were talking privately. That does not answer him, I said. Michael rubbed both hands over his face. It was stupid. You discussed selling my parents' house while I was still alive. I know how it looks. It looks like what you wrote. Lauren pushed back from the table. You went through our emails. It came to me, Richard said. I did not search for it. You still kept it. Yes. Her expression changed then. Not remorse. Betrayal, as if her father's mistake had been preserving the truth instead of protecting them from it. You chose her side the moment you saved that. Richard flinched, but he did not retreat. I looked at him. You stayed at the party and then you hid this. Every time the truth asked you to choose, you chose silence. I know, he said. The answer was so simple that it stopped me. He looked at Lauren and Michael. I told myself I was keeping the family together. What I was really doing was making Evelyn carry every consequence alone. Lauren's voice softened. Dad, we were upset. Mom had been saying Evelyn always made us feel indebted. There it was again. Denise's influence not as an excuse, but as a familiar pressure point. Lauren still wanted her mother's approval badly enough to reshape the past around it. You could have been angry, I said, and still seen me as a person. For one moment, the hardness in Lauren's face cracked. Her eyes moved toward the hallway, then toward the stairs as though she remembered the room she had slept in, or the mornings I had braided her hair before school. Then Michael asked, Are you ever putting us back? The crack closed. I stood. I do not need either of you to call me Mom. I never did. But I will not let you call me nobody while you wait to inherit everything I built. Lauren turned to Richard. Say something. He looked at the emails, then at his children, and finally at me. For 23 years, Richard had tried to keep everyone by saying as little as possible. That night he drew a breath and finally chose his words. Richard rested both hands on the table and looked at Lauren first. Evelyn never tried to replace your mother, he said. She never asked you to call her Mom. She never asked either of you to choose between them. Lauren folded her arms, but Richard continued before she could interrupt. When Michael was in the hospital, Evelyn was the one who stayed beside him until I got there. When you had Noah and could barely sleep, she came 3 mornings a week before work, even when she had her own business to run. She helped because she loved you, not because she was trying to buy a title. Lauren's eyes filled though her expression remained guarded. Richard turned toward Michael. And I helped create this mess. I told both of you about the trust because I wanted to prove Evelyn saw you as her children. I thought that would make you feel secure. He touched the printed emails with 2 fingers. But I never taught you that her love was not something you could spend. Michael lowered his head. Lauren shook hers. We were talking privately. People say things they do not mean when they are frustrated. You excluded her from a party she helped pay for, Richard said. Then you told her she had never been family. That was not private, and it was not an accident. Mom was there? Lauren replied. You know how complicated that is. I know Denise coming back brings up old feelings. I also know Evelyn did not cause your mother to leave. Lauren looked toward the window. For a moment, she seemed younger. Not 35. Not a nurse or a mother defending choices she had already made. She looked like the 12-year-old girl who used to sit on our porch waiting for a car that did not come. Then she said, So you are choosing Evelyn over your own children. Richard's face tightened. No, I am choosing not to abandon my wife because my adult children dislike the consequences of what they said. Lauren blinked hard. Richard's voice stayed calm. You told Evelyn to stay out of your lives. You cannot demand that her trust remain inside them. The room fell silent. Michael stared at the emails. When he finally spoke, the anger had gone out of him. I did not think you would actually remove us, he said to me. That was the problem. He looked up. You thought I would always remain where you put me, I said. Outside the family when my presence was inconvenient, but close enough whenever you needed my money, my house, or my time. Michael leaned back and rubbed his palms against his jeans. I know that sounds bad. It does not sound bad, Michael. It is bad. He accepted that without arguing. Lauren did not. You are acting like one dinner erased 23 years. No, I said. The dinner revealed what those years meant to you. Her face crumpled then, and this time it was not only anger. Her eyes moved toward the staircase. I wondered whether she remembered the pale yellow bedroom I painted because she hated the pink walls Richard's first wife had chosen. Maybe she remembered the dance the safety pin or the nights I waited up when she drove home from college. She opened her mouth, but whatever she might have said never came. Instead, she gathered the papers. "Come on, Michael." Michael did not move immediately. "Lauren Richards said you do not have to leave like this." She gave a short, unsteady laugh. "What am I supposed to do? Thank her for keeping Noah's money while cutting me out?" "You could begin by apologizing," Richard said. Lauren looked at me. For 1 second I thought she might. Then pride returned to her face. "I need time." She walked out without saying goodbye. The front door closed firmly, but not with the force of a slam. Michael remained in his chair. "I am sorry," he said after a while. The words were quiet and awkward. He did not follow them with an excuse which made them more believable than anything polished would have been. "I treated the trust like it was already mine," he continued. "I built plans around it. I should not have." I nodded. "No, you should not have." "Does this mean there is no way back?" "There may be a way back to a relationship. That is different from a way back into my estate." He looked disappointed, but he did not protest. "You can rebuild something with me if you truly want to," I said. "But you will not rebuild it by asking what it is worth." Michael left a few minutes later. Richard did not follow either child to the driveway. He did not begin calling them before their car reached the end of the street. Instead, he sat beside me on the porch. The evening air smelled like damp grass and magnolia. Richard stared across the yard for a long time before speaking. I thought staying quiet would keep everyone in my life. I waited. All it did was teach them that hurting you had no cost. I looked at him. "Then let this be the last time silence chooses for you." He nodded. I did not forgive him completely that night. Forgiveness built too quickly can become another way of avoiding what happened. But he had finally stood beside me without asking me to shrink so his children could remain comfortable. That was a beginning. Real change came slowly after that. Michael's expansion deal fell apart, but his company did not. He reduced the project, sold a truck he could no longer justify, and found 2 smaller investors who evaluated his actual business instead of an inheritance he did not own. 3 weeks after the confrontation, he mailed me the first payment toward the loan I had given him for his commercial tools. There was no dramatic letter, only a short note. I should have started doing this a long time ago. He began calling occasionally after that. Sometimes he asked about Richard. Sometimes he told me about a difficult job. For the first time, he did not end every conversation by requesting something. Lauren stayed away longer. She allowed Noah to continue visiting us, but she rarely came to the door herself. One afternoon at the lake house, Noah asked why his mother had called me an outsider. I set down the sandwich I was making and crouched beside him. "That is something your mother and I need to work through," I said. "But you never have to wonder whether I love you." He studied my face, then wrapped his arms around my neck as though the answer were enough. "Family is something we practice," I told him softly. "It is not only something we inherit." I kept the trust exactly as I had amended it. Richard remained protected. Noah's education fund stayed under independent management. Lauren and Michael were no longer named beneficiaries. I also began making annual donations to the organization my trust would one day support, helping women who had spent years caring for families without ever having their sacrifices recognized on paper. My mother's bracelet still rests in its velvet box. I once kept it there while waiting for the right day to give it to Lauren. Now I keep it because it belonged to my mother and because I finally understand that not everything precious must be given away to prove you know how to love. Lauren was right about one thing. I was never her mother by blood. But I was real every time she needed comfort time money or forgiveness. I did not take away their future. I simply stopped funding my exclusion from the family. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved even when it hurt? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about family dignity and the quiet strength it takes to finally value yourself.